Don't you wanna die happy with a smile on your face? Wake up a laughing, 'cause you're free of all the things that would hold you from your ocean view. Life's a landscape, why don't you paint it your way?
Hi, Jules.
Hi, Martin.
How are you?
I am pretty good, actually. I've been enjoying this week. I'm enjoying getting involved in the podcast more.
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster, hasn't it?
It has been a roller coaster. But with this way round, I get to see a little bit more of you.
That's a very good point. Yes, I have been an absentee partner of late. So yes, well, I've been super busy. I've been educating myself more about production and post-production in the podcast sphere.
And how's it been going?
Been epic, actually. Now I'm just vibing with it. It's a wonderful thing. I just love the challenge.
Well, and also when we're learning something that we want to learn, that we're choosing to learn, that's where the fun begins, and that's where your passion steps in.
Yeah, true that. And we are inherently creator beings. So I suppose of all the things that one might learning how to make a podcast is pretty cool, isn't it?
It's pretty cool. And you do love your equipment.
I love this new mixer.
All I see is colourful lights. I've got no idea what you're doing over there.
Me neither.
It doesn't show.
So who are we talking to this week?
This week we are talking to Waylon Lewis. He was in Boulder, Colorado when we got to chat with him. And he's the founder of Elephant Journal. And
what's Elephant Journal?
Elephant Journal is an online magazine, and it's set up so that anybody, whether you're just starting out as a writer, whether you're a professional writer, you get to have your articles published and have them read by people from all walks of life.
By millions of people as well.
Millions, yeah.
And the general theme of Elephant Journal is, I guess from a territorial perspective, it's a mindful website, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say mindfulness. I think when I first found Elephant Journal, it was very yogi based. A lot of my friends, a lot of yoga teacher friends had articles. And as with anything, it's evolved.
Yeah, and as I said, it's got millions of people reading it. You introduced me to Elephant Journal a couple of years ago. I started writing for them and have had some incredibly successful articles on there. And some really wonderful interaction with the Elephant Journal audience. What Waylon and his team have done, I think, is created a wonderful conscious media business there. And I know it's more than just one website. I think they have various websites, and they also, he's an author, obviously. Mm-hmm. So they also have writing workshops and retreats and so on and so forth. And essentially, it's all about encouraging the writing community to produce something that people actually want to read.
Yeah, they're very supportive. I know you had a lot of great help with your work that you submitted to Elephant Journal, and you worked alongside an editor.
Yeah, he's a lovely guy. So what did we talk about then? We talked about a lot of things with Waylon.
We did. He was a really lovely guy. I really enjoyed chatting with him. We started off talking a lot about his growing up with Buddhism.
And in Boulder.
Yeah. Which sounds like a very interesting place. I'd like to go.
He's really sold me on Boulder.
Yeah.
I didn't say that in the interview actually, but he's totally sold me on Boulder. I want to go.
Yeah.
Although he, as you'll hear in the interview, he feels like Boulder's changing. But yeah, by all accounts, it's this strange, energetic, connective space, or at least was very much more anyway, where he just kept calling it weird, didn't he?
Yeah.
It's full of strange people, but in a good way.
Yeah.
It's a really weird place. So yeah, we were talking to him about Buddhism because he grew up as a Buddhist. Waylon is definitely not your typical Buddhist, right? Not the stereotypical Buddhist.
Yeah, well, no, not at all. I think, for him, it's very much what I got the impression of is he's working with the practical tools to live a mindful life. And some of his perspectives were really refreshing. Yeah.
So I think for him, Buddhism is a way of life rather than a religion, which, if I'm honest, is my perspective of Buddhism anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you start to see how a lot of the tools within Buddhism are spread across all religions, and we can, if we wish, cherry pick what works for us.
Yeah, well, I think we should cherry pick. I think that keeps us ahead of the curve. Well, do you think we should just dive into it then?
I think we should dive in and listen to this wonderful man's words.
Okie dokie. Well, this is Waylon Lewis. Have you ever been bitten by a dog, Waylon?
Yes, quite recently, actually. Yeah.
No way. Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear that story.
Well, I have a very dear dog buddy in my life, Redford, and he's 14 years old now. And we have a beautiful fenced-in yard here in Boulder, Colorado. And I'm quite social, and Redford is quite social. So we were hosting some dog friends over. And one of them is this crazy puppy from next door who has enough energy to power a small city. And they were running around, and Redford's 14, so he's not really doing his part to tire him out. So I started playing with the dogs, throwing a stick around. Here's Redford, actually. And
good old Redford.
One of the dogs clamped down on the stick that I was holding and didn't get all stick, got my finger and part of my hand. And the teeth just went straight through my flesh, like my flesh was butter. Yeah, and the dog who loves me, I still have some scars here, the dog who's very sweet really didn't understand that it had clamped down on my hand. So luckily I was pretty experienced in getting a dog to unclamp. You just kind of take their jaw and you fold their mouth slightly around. You don't hurt them, but you just make it so that they release. Uh-huh. And I did it all very quickly and cleaned it and very thoroughly because it went straight to the bone, and tied it up. And you know, the dog was super sweet and honestly never even understood anything had happened. And the neighbors were super apologetic. It wasn't their fault at all. And my hand healed up quite nicely.
Okay, maybe that beats the story from yesterday then, because
it sounds more painful.
Yeah,
not trying to beat your story, no.
Well, you inadvertently did, but so Jules was bitten by a dog yesterday, weren't you, Jules? Do you want to quickly tell that story?
Oof.
Yeah, so we were taking our little pups, Atty and Muda, for a walk in the fields, and we stopped to chat to some friends, as we always end up doing on dog walks. And suddenly we turned around and there was this awful noise coming from Atty, and she really screams, and there was a dog attacking her, had her pinned down by the throat. And so Martin steps in and separates them and gets the other dog away, and I instantly have that like mum instinct kicks in, and I pick up Atty and I'm holding her because she's screaming. And then the next thing I know, my bum is on fire, and I turn around and there's a dog clamped to my left butt cheek.
Yeah, hanging off her.
Hanging off her. So much pain.
Oh my God. I'm pretty sure your story's winning here. Bum on fire trumps. Yeah, bum on fire trumps whatever I had.
Well, the reason why it was more amusing was because it turned out the dog was called Karma, and I don't.
Oh wow! Karma bit you in the. Wow.
Literally.
Only in Bali. That's like we say only in Boulder all the time because Boulder is one of those towns, but that's definitely an only in Bali.
It's definitely an only in Bali. So speaking of Boulder, one of the photos I've seen of you is as a make Boulder weird again. Now, so for those of us who've never been to Boulder, do you want to tell us a little bit about Boulder? And Boulder is Colorado, right?
Yeah. That's right. It's in the kind of formerly Wild West, now suburb and fracking-filled Great Plains. And the Great Plains, which are beautiful and vast and used to be populated by buffalo, bison, Native Americans, and, were just vast and endless. Now are, quite developed, and millions of people are moving into Colorado. It's a very popular area. Boulder is this little kind of football-shaped valley nestled right up into the gorgeous Flatirons, the mountains here, the Rocky Mountains. And it's this idyllic little town. It's been named happiest in the United States many times. Best educated, best place to retire, worst fashion, all these kind of things. And yeah, everyone here It's the home of Crocs, which are an abomination.
Yeah.
Yeah. And tie-dye and some other things that we might love a little more. And it's a small town, and it's always been kind of hippie and liberal and Buddhist and yogi and runner and cyclist and climber and scientist. And there's tons of science labs here. But lately, it's just become more yuppie. It's always been a little expensive, but big tech has moved in, venture capital funds have moved in, and the average house price doubled in only 5 years, about 10 years ago.
Wow.
And it's basically now, I always say I've been to 2 housewarmings in the last 10 years. No one can afford to buy a home here anymore, unless, you know, they're moving from California or New York and
That's a shame.
already very well off. Yeah, so it's changed very quickly. It's been a very weird, fun town, and now it's a very kind of normal, Instagram-y, you know, everyone's painting their houses white and black, and it's just getting very moneyed and not very environmental or weird.
So, and there's a history with Boulder and the Buddhists, of course. Which
big history.
Which I'd like to ask you about in a second. But so how's that affected, how's this new gentrification of Boulder affected the previously more Zen community?
I mean, like a lot of places where any kind of gentrification happens, it's kind of rubbed off all the rough edges, you know. It's just becoming like The Truman Show a little bit, one of my favorite movies. It's just becoming very pretty and cute and Instagrammable, but not nearly as much as community and just weirdos as we used to have. It used to be a very strange town.
It sounded good. I like the sound of it.
Yeah.
Strange in a good way, though, I'm assuming.
Well, both. I mean, you love to kind of complain about it when it's in its weird heyday. But yeah, I would, at the climbing gym, I'm climbing with world famous climbers. Right. You know, if I'm biking, I don't even own a car. You don't need to in Boulder. I'm biking around and there's world famous cyclists. Yeah. You know, if you run, you're running slower than world famous runners. There's amazing culinary scene here, just brilliant restaurants. And yeah, the Buddhist scene and the yoga scene. I mean, it's an incredible place to be, but a lot of that, you know, the artists, the folks who aren't as well off, I mean, they've pretty much all moved away if they hadn't already bought a home.
Okay. So let's backtrack to this, the history of Boulder, Buddhism, and Waylon. You were born into a Buddhist family, or you happened upon Buddhism at a young age?
No, yeah, I'm much too sort of, I never really credited myself with being that imaginative or creative in terms, I don't know that I would have sought out any kind of religion if I had grown up not within the Buddhist tradition. So even within Buddhism, I loved the people and I loved the kind of culture that I grew up in. But it took me until I was about 16 until I experienced a little confusion and heartbreak and, you know, the growing pains of growing up or not growing up, for me to really jump into the teachings of Buddhism and meditation myself. And at that point, I realized very quickly that it was really easy to connect with Buddhism. Buddhism, even growing up in it, seemed very strange and a little embarrassing to me, you know.
Were you practicing with the same people regularly? Was there a community that you were hanging with?
Yeah, so this fellow Trungpa Rinpoche, a very controversial teacher in good ways and bad ways, started this big community here, and it was full of artists and poets, you know, Allen Ginsberg and Naropa University, if you've heard of that.
Oh, yeah.
All kinds of entrepreneurs were attracted to it and started restaurants and businesses and publishing, Shambhala Publications, which you may know. And it was an amazing time. And my mom, single mom for most of those years, raised me. And yeah, I knew and practiced meditation all the time. I went to a Buddhist school that they had founded. And I loved a lot of it. I went to a Buddhist kind of summer camp, which was brilliant. You would have loved it.
What happens at Buddhist summer camp?
Sounds like my kind of camp.
Yeah, anything you might think happens at a Buddhist summer camp other than meditation, which certainly happened, and dishes, which
Yeah.
certainly happened,
Uh-huh.
didn't happen at this camp. It was like basically like Boy Scouts. I mean, one day we'd be practicing Japanese Zen style, kind of samurai style archery or flower arranging with world famous, I mean, literally the imperial bowmaker to the Emperor of Japan was there teaching us. And then other days, you know, you're in a sort of Boy Scout uniform running around playing capture the flag and singing Buddhist-y sort of marching songs. I mean, it was very strange and very, but on a, you know, as a kid, you don't know what's strange and not. You're experiencing life for the first time. So
yeah, it sounds like
from
good,
our point of
healthy
view,
fun.
exactly. The coolest thing when I was a kid is I was very nerdy for a while growing up. I grew out of that at some point and my grades went down, my popularity went up. But growing up, I was very nerdy. And it was the 1 week a year where I could go and just relax and be myself. And everyone who was cool, everyone who was uncool, everyone was in one community and liked each other and was kind. So
Wonderful.
that was a relief.
It sounds incredibly wholesome, and I suppose it's funny if you think about how our childhoods have evolved, certainly in the West, and how, well, fast forward to 2021, the way to keep a child quiet these days, I sense, is to hand them a tablet. Said without judgment, but it's certainly something I see.
Sure.
I see happening an awful lot these days.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you had a pretty cool time. So you're 16. You're practicing Buddhism. You were practicing regularly, so maintaining a regular practice of meditation and presumably yoga and so on and so forth. Fast forward to 2004, then, when you started the Elephant Journal. Now I'm aware you've probably been asked these questions a million times, but I want to play catch up for our listeners. So I just wondered if you could give us a quick 2 minutes on how you founded Elephant Journal.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, it was actually 2002, and I had
apologies.
No, you're good. And I had grown up really poor with my single mom, and I wanted to do I loved writing. Kerouac was one of my idols, you know, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Mark Twain. And as I got older, my authorial inspirations have diversified somewhat. But I wanted to be a writer, but I wanted to somehow make sure that I could make a living. I had seen how intense and painful my mom's life was sometimes around not having any money. We had lost our house and never really had a car or a TV or normal food or presents often. And it was still a great life. My mom was an amazing mom. But so I wanted to start a company, is basically my point. And this fellow was starting a yoga magazine. And I had actually never done yoga. The Buddhist world and the yoga world really, and never the twain shall meet. Back in the day in Boulder, the Buddhists were sort of starting businesses and wearing suits and partying, and the yoga people were very serious and kind of doing their own thing. They were different worlds. So I jumped into this yoga publication with this fellow, and he wound up quitting. He wasn't a journalist. I had trained in journalism. And so I just turned it into Elephant. And I turned it from being about yoga to being about anything that yoga people might be interested in. Meaning it could be yoga, but it could be organic food. It could be mindful relationships. It could be eco responsible travel. It could be anything, politics, cycling, anything. And so I renamed it Elephant because, you know, elephants were sacred.
Yeah.
Ganesh was one of my favorites when I was a kid. Sacred in the yoga tradition, sacred in the Buddhist tradition. In real life, they're an example of mankind's lack of relationship to nature. And I say mankind because largely men right now are responsible for the destruction of habitat for the elephants. And they're this huge, beautiful creature, but because they're so huge, they're so vulnerable. They're going extinct within our lifetimes at the current rate. They're
Super
matriarchal, they're vegan, they're sentient, they can look in a mirror, they grieve their young. Looking in a mirror is one of the tests for does an animal
Sentience.
get that they exist? Yeah, exactly.
Do you know, I didn't know that. That strikes me as really obvious. Anyway.
Yeah,
On.
it's an interesting one. Dolphins are in that class. I don't know how they got a mirror into the
Underwater.
But certain animals, not Redford, not my dog, will look at a mirror and will recognize that it's them.
Yeah.
Oh, there I am.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, elephants are beautiful. And so from an environmental angle, it also meant
it tied in nicely.
Yeah.
And of course, Ganesh, for those who don't know, is an elephant god, the mover of objects, and a character we see a lot in Bali, right?
Yeah, in Bali, we both had Ganesh on our water bottles, didn't we, when we first met? And
still do, actually.
Aww.
And Ganesh to me has always been a big part of my life. And whenever I think of Elephant Journal, for me, it brings me back to memories of India. And actually not necessarily because of the elephant, but I came across Elephant Journal when I was in India. And a lot of my yogi friends put me on to Elephant Journal. And they were all traveling around the world. And, you know, a lot of them had articles within the magazine. And I think that was maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And
exactly. Yeah.
It was really, I remember them all loving that they could get their writings into this space. And they always mentioned the ecosystem. And I wondered like how the ecosystem came about, because I really love how accessible Elephant Journal is for people to come in and have their articles published.
We should explain what the ecosystem is also, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So the ecosystem is, you know, I borrowed that term from nature, obviously, where everything is interconnected and feeds or leads to the next step in that ecosystem. So, you know, for example, the clouds produce rain, and the rain produces, you know, with the sunshine produces crops, and the crops can feed animals or humans, and etc. So the ecosystem at Elephant is basically that any writer can write, that we then share those articles. The author can share them with their community. We share them with our, 13 million Facebook fans on 60 pages and nearly 1 million on Instagram on various accounts, and our newsletter.
Huge audience.
And then, our front page itself. And then readers kind of take control. The readers, based on the number of reads or number of shares or number of hearts or number of comments, determine the so-called ecosystem score. And the ecosystem score, say it's 3.8 or 8.2, is out of 10, kind of like the Olympics where you hold up a placard. The top ecosystem scores of any given week are the people we pay. So it's very important to me as a writer, to create a platform that has two contradictory functions. One is to accept anyone who wants to write.
Yeah.
And that's anyone other than trolls. Like, it needs to be something constructive or helpful for the universe or society. Yeah. And number two, the contradictory goal is to pay writers. We can't pay thousands of writers a month, which we have thousands of writers a month, but we can let the readers decide which ones are most valuable. Like, say you wrote about your journey, you're meeting each other with the Ganesh water bottles, or your journey with wellness and addiction, or whatever. We have so many wonderful, helpful articles, hopefully, on Elephant. And then the top ones get voted on by the readers, and then we pay 10 to 15 writers a week. So that's like 40 to 60 a month. And then our goal is to expand that.
Yeah.
As Elephant grows, we want to pay 1,000 writers a week.
That would be nice.
4,000. Yeah. We want it to be a platform where anyone can write for fun, kind of like on Reddit or Facebook or Instagram. You just write something. But then if it gets kind of cherry picked out by the readers, and they say, wow, I've been through that. That was helpful. Then they get paid in a very automated way. And the point of the ecosystem was that it took that payment out of, say, my hands, the subjective hands of one person, and it gave it to the community, which is the whole point, our whole mission.
Well, actually, it was Jules who told me about Elephant Journal in the first place, couple of years ago, and that's what attracted me to...
No worries.
Yeah, she's a walking ambassador for you. Actually, I am inadvertently, because I've mentioned a few of the articles that I've had as editor's picks on Elephant Journal in various episodes of How to Die Happy.
Thank you.
So, yeah, and I've been one of those lucky writers who received a payment from your company. So it's always lovely when you get that recognition and you get some eyes on your articles.
And you had great fun with the ecosystem. He'd always be running in saying, "Oh, I've got more likes and my number's gone up.
I'm up to 9. I need to get to 10." The frustrating thing is when you get downgraded from a 10 to a 9 again, you're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. Got to do it again."
Yeah, it's a little complex, but it's pretty intelligent, meaning, it's not, I didn't want to make it a popularity contest merely. So there's 5 different categories. So it's not just likes, we see this sort of unhealthy behavior on Instagram or wherever, but that it's, there's some sense of quality. Does it get an editor's pick or a comments or interaction? So we really tried to say, how does quality get measured? Well, people bothering to heart it or bothering to share it. So we put in all these different factors, and hopefully that equals quality, not just like, a funny kitten video being cute or a sexy blog attracting eyeballs, but not depth.
Well, I think it does because of the nature of how it works. So essentially, you've created this giant mindfulness portal, which, from my perspective as a writer on it, I can see it's accessible to people at various points in their journey. I've certainly had lots and lots of interaction and messages with people who are either new to their, I don't like to use the word spirituality too much, but new to their journey of awakening, versus people who are actually, they've been happy practitioners, Zen practitioners, for example, for a long time. Actually, that leads us on to this week's question from our Manchu priest, Ketut. So we asked Ketut a question. What was the question?
We asked Ketut, what advice would you give to someone who is just starting to explore mindfulness, meditation, or spirituality? And the theme is mindfulness for all.
So let's now hear from Ketut.
Thoughts from Ketut. Yes, if you give that title on it, and it's more confusing, If you really like, if I drink the water without name it the water, so it's just tasted that, mind, spiritual, this is just the word. What is more important is how you feel. That is more important. But when you put a title and then get stuck with it, and then you make it that image happen, and then also you lost it. You lost the point. What is about this journey is like, you be with it, you feel it. I think it's more important is be with that. Be with that. And then from that is come from your action. If you say about spiritual, your action will prove it that one. So you don't have to get attachment with that word first. Be and action. Because if you are be, whatever you give title spiritual, and then your action will follow. That's how I think living in the balance.
Thank you, Ketut. Wisdom as always. And of course, he's talking about attachment to form and to ideas and to words and to identity. So instead of just being mindful, a lot of us are talking about mindfulness or doing it. Does that make sense? What do you think?
Well, yeah, in my world as a yoga teacher, I find there's a lot of labels about it, and then people talk much more about the idea of what they're doing rather than actually delving into the practices for themselves. It's much more, it can be much more of a show.
Yeah, but I remember when I first started meditating, I was telling everybody, I wanted everyone to know that I was making these changes. It's all part of the journey, isn't it? I think, and it's part of that. It's part of the ego death process, which can take years for some people.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Should I offer my thoughts on
What do you
Ketut?
think, Waylon? Yes, please.
Yeah. I mean, Ketut is right on. I mean, he's basically saying, like in Zen, they say, the second you say something, it's no longer true. So Trungpa Rinpoche, my parents' teacher, would say, he would talk about Dharma, like Buddha Dharma or truth Dharma, Dharma without credentials. That was a whole kind of seminar he did. So the point of Dharma without credentials is, yeah, exactly what both of you said. You know, there's nothing wrong with being all giddy and excited that you're meditating and talking about it, or yoga, or your adventure to Machu Picchu or Bali, or, you know, but at the same time, like Trungpa Rinpoche would talk about the tiger. The tiger is powerful and it goes through the jungle very quietly, and it's huge, but it moves almost silently. And there's this quality in the Buddhist teachings called meek, M-E-E-K, where if you got it, kind of opposite of Twitter culture or Instagram culture, if you got it, you don't actually have to flaunt it. There's nothing wrong with flaunting it. You can be joyful. You don't need to make yourself small. But if you got it, you can just be kind of relaxed. You can breathe. And I think, you know, Trungpa Rinpoche has a whole book called Spiritual Materialism, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, that so many of us enter into the spiritual path with a mix of good intentions and maybe this will be the thing that makes me completely happy and powerful and never feel suffering, which is a little mixed up. And then what we find is, like many beginning meditators say, this isn't working. I'm feeling more confused than I was before I started meditating. And meditation teachers love that, of course. They say, no. You were this confused before you started meditating, but you basically opened the closet door and saw this hoarding, like all these toys and things fell out from your whole life. So just keep with it. Just stay steady. I have this beautiful poem by Gary Snyder somewhere around here. Stay steady. So you just keep meditating, and then pretty soon you've gone through all the hoarding. You've donated it to Goodwill, or, you know, cleaned it up and put it up on your mantle. And does that make sense? And there's some sense of you can relax and you can appreciate what you do keep, and you can give away or let go of that which is no longer of service to your life or to service to the world. So,
which is really nicely put.
Yeah, very much so. And but it is a process, isn't it? And I suppose as the founder of Elephant Journal, you are interacting on a daily basis with many people somewhere in their journey. What advice do you give to people who are just trying to find their way toward? I'm going to use the word mindfulness, even though Ketut told me not to. But so how do you help people along to get started on that journey?
Yeah, so I mean, meditation in Buddhism, Buddha Dharma, is described as a self-cutting sword or a self-burning flame. So there's no problem with using the word mindfulness or talking about meditating, as long as you keep practicing mindfulness and you keep practicing meditation, because the process of meditation itself will kind of cut or help you let go of attachment to that meditation. I remember when I was young, and really into meditation, because I was like confused and I was exploring this Buddhist stuff, and it was like finally all connecting. I was kind of, what you said about yourself reminded me of me.
Yeah, giddy.
I was like, I'm really getting it. I'm meditating so amazingly right now. I'm probably going to attain enlightenment.
I'm so enlightened right now.
And I like went, I wasn't quite yet, but I thought I might become it. I was like close. And I went to my meditation instructor the next day after this session. I'm like, you wouldn't believe it. Everything looked golden. And I was like so present. And he just looked at me, and I'm so grateful for this moment with him, because he didn't condemn me. He didn't try to make me small, but at the same time, he didn't buy into any of my silliness. He just said, "You're very dramatic, aren't you?" and it just just totally deflated me. But he wasn't mean about it, because the tendency is to, and we do it with ourselves, is to get overly excited about what we're good at or what we think we're good at, or to be overly harsh with the parts of ourselves that we're ashamed about or insecure about.
Yeah.
And we can just chill out. Meditation helps us. The Buddha talks about the middle way, where we can take responsibility for ourselves. A lot of people in popular spiritual culture say, don't shame me. Shaming is a big bad word now. And coming from the Buddhist tradition, I'm always like, well, yeah, you don't want people to shame you, and you don't want to shame others. That's a bit heavy. But it's actually a part of the growing up process to take some responsibility and to have a moment, 3 seconds of shame. In Buddhism, they talk about 3 seconds of regret. So you F up, right? And you go, I was a jerk there. I didn't like seeing the hurt on my friend's face.
Yeah.
And you sit with that. And then you say, okay, I'm going to move forward. I'm going to go apologize. I'm going to do it differently. You know, so it's not that you get attached to your own shame, but you feel a moment of it. And then you go forward and you try to do better or be more empathetic or work with your temper or whatever the F up was. So anyway, there's a quality of like, we can be critical with ourselves, but not too critical. And we can be honest with ourselves, but don't be too harsh. And we can like ourselves, but don't get high on yourself. And you can have a good time, but maybe don't overdo it. Like people just, we love to take ourselves too seriously. And Buddhism fundamentally is like lighten up.
Yeah.
You know, it's the next moment.
Yeah, it's very pragmatic, is Buddhism. That's something I was attracted to rather instantly when I happened upon it. I can't really think when I did happen upon it. I'm not a practicing Buddhist, but I have adopted many of the Buddhist principles, and I think it was probably in learning the concept of impermanence that then led me to start read into Buddhism, and then I discovered the 3 marks of existence, anicca, dukkha, and anatta. And for our listeners, anicca is impermanence, dukkha is suffering, and anatta is, I'm just going to say no self, just to keep it simple. But you might want to elaborate on that actually for me.
Right. Yeah, I think, 2 points. One, I would say, and I should almost like apologize for my enthusiasm about Buddhism, because Buddhists are very clear. Like, we're not trying to convert anyone. No one on this podcast in any way should feel pressured to read Pema Chodron or walk around with a mala or whatever, you know. Dharma at its best is the exact same good stuff fundamentally as in any other mystic tradition or in any non-theistic tradition.
Yeah.
So, and then number 2, egolessness. I mean, so a lot of the teachings of Buddhism sound like a total bummer coming from the capitalistic mindset. The capitalist mindset is, I'm going to drive into the McDonald's drive-in. I'm going to get my burger quickly, and it better be perfect. And I'm going to give them my money, and boom, I'm off. I'm going to eat my thing while multitasking, and then
mindlessly
get on with my day.
Yeah. Right.
So there's a sort of like the customer is always right kind of thing. But outside of capitalism, the customer is almost never right. And so the Buddha, like one of his first teachings, as you know, was the Four Noble Truths. And it literally begins with, life is suffering.
Yeah.
You know,
welcome
so
to
it's not
samsara.
very good advertisement. The Buddha wasn't a very good marketer.
No,
you know, he would
wasn't.
never get hired at Crispin Porter Bogusky.
No.
No, but so egolessness is literally half the teachings of Buddhism are like anything you feel proud about or attached to, it's time to let that go. But then the good news of Buddhism comes in the second part, which is once you let it go, you have Buddha nature.
Yeah.
You're fundamentally A-OK, and you just merge with the whole universe, and yet you're still separate, and you can celebrate life and be kind to others. So it's not a bummer, but it's kind of a bummer in the beginning.
Yeah.
Sorry. What were you
No,
gonna
I'd say, yeah, I think when people first come across that bit, it does seem a bit of a bummer, but once you work through it and you start embodying the rest and letting go, you open up space.
Yeah, it's also just like you're finally talking, like, I don't know how much you talk about your experience, but you're finally talking with someone who's being frank with you.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that someone would be like, okay, the 3 marks of existence, or there's this, like, literally there's lists like, you know, the suffering of change. There's so many lists that are just not good marketing for Buddhism. And yet you're like, okay, if you digest it, you're like, I can connect with this.
Yeah.
This makes sense. I'm not being deceived. Well, Trungpa Rinpoche said, just one final note, Trungpa Rinpoche said, the ultimate enemy of everything, life, truth, love, is self-deception. So we can spend our entire lives kind of selling ourselves down one river or another. And Buddhism is kind of like, you know, you've finally given up. The Buddha himself had to give up, right, beneath the tree to wake up. And when he woke up, things were actually really sweet and kind and peaceful.
Yeah. Whilst people might think Buddhism is an extreme religion, perhaps because of the dogma and the doctrines and everyone shaving their head and the red and yellow outfits. It's
right.
When you get to the nuts and bolts, as we've just been discussing, it makes real sense. And certainly from a personal perspective, it just resonated with me. It makes my heart sing when I learn something from the Buddhist practices or read something that the Buddha said, and I realize it's talking to me, and I realize it's talking to all of us. So in that regard, there's a real simple resonance to it all. I'm just in the process of reading The Way of Zen by Alan Watts. I don't know if you've read that. I haven't.
I love Alan Watts, though.
Well, just an amazing, incredible mind and writer and orator. But he spent a great deal of time getting involved in Zen Buddhism, particularly the Japanese practices. But actually, he says in his book that a lot of these lists, and I can't remember the name for all the lists, but of course, in Buddhist scriptures, there are list upon list upon list, aren't there? And he was quite keen to point out in his book that it's entirely unlikely that the Buddha actually said a lot of that stuff that was put in the list. It was more likely the priests and the devotees who took on the mindset of it and started to try and roll it out, and they felt that they needed to have this structure, hence all the lists. So, okay, right. So we're talking about Buddhism, but I'm particularly interested in talking about your book. You have a new book coming out, right? So it's Never Too Late to Fall in Love with Your Life. Everyday Buddhist Tips for a Mindful Life. Yeah,
so my first book was called Things I Would Like to Do With You. I have a habit of overly long titles. And the second one, which you just mentioned, is Never Too Late to Fall in Love with Your Life. And I felt quite seriously about that title because I feel like for all of us, we get into this place, whether we're young or old or middle-aged, where we feel like we're kind of effing it up. Like everyone out there at the park, you know, all the beautiful couples and everyone on Instagram, everyone's having a good time. And we know maybe their life isn't perfect, but people seem to be doing some cool stuff. You know, you two are in Bali with your Ganesh mugs walking around, getting bit on the butt by karma. That's pretty amazing. And you have a podcast. Yeah, it's incredible. And instead of appreciating everyone else, like I could appreciate your life, there's some part of us, our insecurity, our ego, which is sort of saying the same thing sometimes, that says YOLO, right? I'm missing out. So It's Never Too Late to Fall in Love with Your Life is a compilation of some of the lists that you just mentioned in Buddhism that were most helpful to me. So David Whyte, I don't know if you know him, the poet, has this beautiful poem, House of Belonging. And one of the lines in that poem is, this home is a place for all the things that has taken me so long to learn to love. And that line knocked me out of the
Nice.
out of the park. It was, he shared that poem at the very beginning of the quarantine with this pandemic, and it has taken me so long, all the things it has taken me so long to learn to love. So I basically put this book together. We were already working on it. That poem wasn't the inspiration for the book, but it captures what I'm trying to do with this book, which is share everything that has been helpful to me from my teachers that I'm so grateful for, and that it took me so long to understand, and everything I learned the hard way, or that took me forever to learn, I'm just putting into like a really simple format in this book. Mm-hmm. So I basically feel like as soon as the book is out, if I get run over by a Mack truck and I'm like a cartoon pancake and we all say, bye-bye, Waylon, I've left behind the stuff that was most helpful to me. And
nice.
I'm putting it in that way because it's not my brilliant teachings. It has nothing to do with like, these are the things I want to leave behind in this world. Mm-hmm. Like, I didn't come up with any of this stuff. In Buddhism, and you mentioned, you know, the students and students of the students of the students of the Buddha put together these lists. In Buddhism, we call that lineage. Mm. And lineage, you know, my teachers, my mentors passed this stuff down to me, and I just want to pass it on, keep the baton going. So I basically took everything that was most helpful to me, and not all of it's Buddhism. Some of it's like activism, or some of it's environmentalism, or some of it's veganism, or some of it's, you know, relationship stuff. Everything that like made sense to me, that really helped me be of some benefit, which is our mission in life at Elephant and in Buddhism is, and hopefully all of us, just to be of benefit to others. So I put all that together, and it's 108 of these things with a little commentary on each one. And in Buddhism, we have these cards, and you read one card a day, and there might be commentary. It's called Lojong, or training the mind. So it's basically in that format. It's one thing a day, or maybe it's 365. I'm in the middle of editing, I should know.
Who knows?
But it's destroying my brain. I have no brain left. I just got out of hours of editing. So I think it's only 108. And then we're going to do 2 more books to get to. Anyway, whatever. It's a whole bunch of them. And once it's on the page, I clearly have no brain left.
Well, you won't need one because it'll all be in writing.
Yeah, exactly.
But what a beautiful project. And it sounds like a life's work to a great extent.
It's also a great practice.
Yeah, I mean,
just to go back over everything you've learned. You know, sometimes we kind of put it on a shelf and we forget these things. Yeah. And when you start researching back through all these wonderful things you've been taught,
it's a refresher for all of us, isn't it? I often do that because I'm a big prose fan, and I certainly love sharing prose from the Buddha, from Young Pueblo. He's a favorite. Yeah. Alan Watts. Eckhart Tolle, for example. Yeah. I love to find these little pearls of wisdom that a writer or a thinker has just taken that extra time just to craft into a few words for us all to remember. Mm-hmm. And I think that's it's a beautiful thing. And of course, you're doing that in the book, aren't you? So are they quotes or prose?
Yeah, it's 2 things. So one, it's quotes, but I wanted also, so with Lojong mind training, they're called slogans, and you read one and it's just a quote, and it might say, be grateful to everyone. And that's the quote for the day. And you contemplate that for the day. Or always trust the principal one. And you read that and you contemplate it for the day. But always trust the principal one. You're like, what does that mean? So then you read the commentary, and the commentary is usually about maybe 400 words. And then you have a Dharma teaching there. So it's twofold. It's prose and just a quote. Because I think in today's Instagram, Twitter culture, quotes have never been more popular, and yet it's not enough. It's too much of a soundbite. We're too speedy.
It's skin deep, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's that McDonald's mentality again. It's like, oh, I got a quote from Pema Chodron, I got a quote from Eckhart or Brene Brown or whomever it is, and then you roll on with your life. And the quote helps, but it's just a little road bump in our speediness. We need to sometimes, if we're up for it, just read a little bit. 400 words isn't long. Read a little bit and just actually process our hearts and our karma a little bit. And then we actually become slightly different people because we've connected with some dharma, some teaching, some truth. And so these are the things that affected me in that way.
It actually settles in. Because it resonated with me so much, because there are some similarities, I think, with your intentions for the book and our intentions for the How to Die Happy podcast.
Love that.
Our slogan is stories and practical utilities for the arts of living and dying well. Well, the thread, of course, is the top 10 common deathbed regrets. And these deathbed regrets are, when you read them as a complete list, it's actually pretty sad, because you hear that people wish that they'd said, "I love you" more. I wish I'd had the courage to follow my dreams. I wish I'd known that happiness was closer. I wish I'd had the courage to express my true self. And you sort of get this sense of this collective of people who didn't actually, for whatever reason, have the best of lives. They didn't live. They were human doings, not human beings. So the whole idea of what we're trying to do with this show and getting wonderful minds like yourself on is to share those stories, but also be able to share some practical utilities, because I think I completely agree with you. These days, there are a lot of people using sound bites. I am one of them, but then you must then support that with I think a practical utility, and that way anyone on the spectrum, regardless of whether or not you ever even thought about reading a Buddhist quote or whether or not you believe in reincarnation or life after death, or you just think you're going to die, and when you die you're dead. There are within this, and I think by the sounds of it also in your book, these practical utilities that anybody can take away to just refresh, or they're invited to refresh, how they live their life today. Because I think that's the important thing, isn't it? And that's certainly something, well, it's in your title, isn't it? It's never too late to fall in love with your life. There's no age or a particular time when this should happen.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, on a simple level, we want that moment to happen from the get-go, from when we're 0, when we're a baby. We want to be encouraged. We want to create, even bigger than that, we want to create a society where everyone is encouraged.
Wouldn't that be lovely?
You know, ikigai or right livelihood. There's different words for it, but follow their dreams, but also have those dreams be a benefit, but also have those dreams be able to pay the bills, but also have those dreams be something that they're trained in properly and thoroughly and are good at. Those are the different qualities of right livelihood. Meaning, if I want to be a ballerina, that could be beautiful, but I need to train in it because I'm not any good at that yet.
Yeah.
Or ever, in my case.
You never know.
Were you a ballerina?
Yeah, you never know.
I was a ballerina, yeah.
How long were you a ballerina for?
I think I started ballet when I was a toddler.
Yeah.
And I left it behind when I was about 18.
Yeah.
Just at the point where I was in my life, you know, you've got to really commit to it. And as a younger child, there was a moment where I wanted to go to performing arts school. But I think I was 11 and I was climbing trees and having fun with my friends. So, you know, there's these moments within that path where you've got to make that decision and really commit to it. And that's tough, especially when you're young.
It's a rigid, I know a couple of professional ballet dancers actually, and it's a super rigid process, and their training is absolutely hardcore, and they've all got really gnarly feet.
Well, yeah, my feet were pretty gnarly, and I'd say now, as being, you know, as a yoga teacher, I'm much more compassionate to my body than I probably was as a ballerina.
Yeah, it's a totally different art.
It's very different, yeah.
For sure. So we have another segment on our show, Waylon, which is called Be My Guest. So we always invite people to, audience members, to record little questions if they so wish. And somebody has recorded one for you. So here we go.
Be my guest. Let's talk, my friend. Let's talk, my friend. This is not the end.
That's the wonderful singer Dwayne Forrest. And here's our caller. It's a chap called Evan, I think, from Montreal. He's a Russian chap.
Hi, I'm Ed from Montreal. I got a question. What is the end goal for our soul? Thank you very much.
Wow, that's a big question. Did you hear that? What is the end goal for our soul?
Oh yeah, not a small question. small in syllables, but not in scope.
Yeah. What have you got for Ev then, Waylon?
Well, I think if I knew that, or if anyone knew that, we would not be what we are, which is human. But I think we have a question fundamentally as human beings, whether we want to be selfish, as I think, forget who put it this way, but said you can be selfish in an intelligent way or you can be selfish in a stupid way. Being selfish in a stupid way means you only care about yourself. And there's a Buddhist expression that says, if you want to be happy, think first of others. Not only of others, but first of others. If you want to be unhappy, think only of yourself. So being selfish in a dumb way, or I should say in a stupid way, is thinking only of myself. Ultimately, we invest a lot in me, but that doesn't actually make us happy or fulfilled. Mm. And then as a collective and individually, if we want to invest in the other wolf, the notion that my selfish happiness is connected with your selfish happiness and your happiness, and if we all care about one another, and even about animals and sentient beings and our planet, and it doesn't have to be utopic or socialist. We very quickly get distracted by kind of philosophies or arguments, but if there's some general attitude of caring, as most of us know or have experienced, so it's not even philosophy, when you care, you experience two things. One, you experience a little bit of heartbreak because you care about others. Your heart is exposed. But secondly, you experience joy because you're connecting, because you can love. If your heart is open, you can love. So it's a little bit painful, but there's also a lot of love. And that pain, as you also know, as many know, can turn sort of like lead into gold. That pain, when we care about others, becomes a thing called empathy. What I've been through, I now care about you. And when we can help one another, that pain or that suffering can turn into kind of joy in that I went through that, or I went through something like that. Oh my God, it's a simple connection. And through that connection, we wake up a little bit. A little dark corner of our heart wakes up. So I think we just have to decide as a collective, the soul that is all of humanity, if we want to invest in one another, or we want to kind of go down in flames caring only about ourselves. And it's easy to say, and of course we're going to make mistakes all along the way. We all care about ourselves all the time, but there's no problem with that. We just have to care about ourselves right? Not just ourselves and nothing else.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's a really lovely way to put it. If we could all just take that little bit of time to think of others and to realize we're all in this together. We're a collective.
But also remember our humanity. I just thinking about Ev's question as well while you were answering that so eloquently. I wonder, I don't know what Ev believes, so I don't know if Ev believes that the soul is in this body and then we die and it goes to heaven, hell or purgatory if you follow the Christians, or if he believes in reincarnation, in which case the soul might have signed up to 1,000 lifetimes on this planet. I certainly, speaking from a personal experience, which is a little bit left field, but I'll share the tale because it's a short one. When I was in my early 20s, I had a guided meditation session. First time I'd ever done anything like this. And I was having acupuncture at the same time. And the lady who guided me took me into a sort of a deep state of meditation. And ultimately, I met my higher self, and I asked my higher self, what am I here to do? What am I on this planet to do? And this character just replied with, you're here to learn to love. Now I was 24 and about to embark on 20 years of serious alcohol and drug addiction. So, and the wrong kind of selfishness. So I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready for that lesson. Fast forward now, I'm 46 next week. And having had a fun old time of it, I now understand. So certainly from my perspective, I think we live in a realm of duality. That's what Earth School is. It's all about duality, and I certainly feels to me like I'm here to learn to love in spite of duality. So if I can navigate the assault course of Earth School and duality and judgment, of course, which we just touched on, and still manage to be mindful and still manage to put myself in service to others, then that feels like kind of the right direction. I don't know what else happens after that, Ev. None of us do. Well, some of us probably do. I don't know. There are some more awakened beings who are on the planet this time who seem to have some access to some serious facts. I guess that's still a big question, isn't it?
There's that great quote from Kurt Vonnegut, who kind of answered this question. He said, and while we're here, I forget the exact quote, but it's something like, and while we're here, we'll do the work, or the only thing that matters, or something, is kindness. And I think the Buddha had a different teaching on that. He had a teaching like the 6 things, I've written about this on Elephant, the 6 profound questions that don't matter. And which is a really delightful thing. And he said there's 6 huge questions in life. And it's not that they don't matter, it's that the answers don't matter. And one of them is what happens after we die. So he said basically what matters is serving others, is being kind to yourself. And when you hear that, it's sort of a relief. You're like, okay, we don't know what happens. We'll find out. Or maybe we won't. Maybe it'll be like turning the TV off and the TV doesn't know what happened to it. Yeah. You're like, I don't know. But while we're here, we'll do I'm getting the Kurt Vonnegut quote mixed up with Allen Ginsberg. Typical Waylon mix-up. But Allen Ginsberg had this, Ginsberg has this amazing quote. He says, and while we're here, I'm losing it. But it's something like, be kind. Everything else is the final line, drunk and dumb show. So other than being kind, it's all a drunk and dumb show. It's all just noises and farts and fireworks and who cares? Just be kind.
The rest is detail, I suppose. I think that's. Have you heard of the concept of omnism? It's I don't know how I came across it, but an omnist is someone who believes that there is truth in all religion, but no one religion is truth. I suppose if I had to identify, I might identify as a bit of an omnist. But the thing is that there are common threads of beliefs and practices for all of us out there. And of course, there's also the law of the universe and the golden rule, isn't there? The golden rule is, I'm paraphrasing, treat others the way you want to be treated. So when push comes to shove, it's the really simple stuff is be nice, be kind. But be kind to yourself as well, which I think a lot of people forget. And I think that's
well, you talked about duality. We get so into, be of service and be kind, but we forget that has to start with something that isn't a simple sort of trite advice. It has to start with not just being kind to yourself, which in Buddhism we call maitri, getting to know yourself, making friends with yourself, the parts you like and the parts you don't like, but actual meditation practice. It comes back to actually doing the work of learning how to be present fully with yourself and with others, because we got to hang in there in relationships. We have conflict. We have conflict with ourselves. We all want to take the fast food, easy exit, but real life isn't be kind. I actually kind of really dislike advice like that, because it doesn't say how. The question isn't what. Everyone knows, oh, be kind, that sounds cool. You know, like those signs people have in their kitchens, live, laugh, love.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, that sounds nice, but
How?
I bet you had a screaming fight with your partner in front of that sign.
Yeah.
And that sign, you just looked at it with irritation during that fight, or maybe a little plaintive, like, how? You know, I agree, but how? Because I'm fighting with someone I love right now. So the question, this is actually from Oprah Winfrey. When I was doing interviews many years ago, I was starting to do interviews and I was really bad at them. You guys are much better than I ever was.
You are too kind.
So I studied all these people who are good at doing interviews. Oprah was one of them. And she said the best advice she ever got, and it was from this lady who actually died, who was on her show many times. She was suffering from bulimia. And Oprah was with her in the hospital bed. And she was saying, you have to eat. You have to just eat. You have to take care of yourself. You have to be kind to yourself. And the young woman, she was practically a girl, looked at Oprah just brokenhearted and desperate and said, but how? That was the best. And Oprah took that, like, stop telling people what to do or what to be, and help show them how. And that's what, again, forget Buddhism, forget any one religion, but that's what the Buddhist path is, or the notion of path is. How do I get from here to there? In Buddhism, we call it sugata. So you want to cross the river of confusion. So the river of confusion is a weird way of describing life, but that's what life is. So how do we get from here to there? And here isn't a bad place. Here is just, we're confused. We have wonderful potential. We're sweethearts. We're nice children. We get into fights on the schoolyard, whatever. We're a mixed bag, but we're kind of cute and wonderful. But how do we get from here to there where, you know, like you said, we can, I don't like the notion of living your best life, but you said it really well, like live your life, live the life that you really want to live, which is, you know, being kind, traveling, not working all the time, you know, the things on that list before you die that people have regrets around. And so sugata is a term that says you don't just grow up, you don't just go through the confusion, but you do it with joy. So we have to celebrate this very confusing, difficult journey we're on. Just because we're fundamentally good. And, you know, in Zen teachings, they say, when you finally get there, you do exactly what you did back in the day, right? Nothing changes. The mountain in Zen, they say that in the beginning of your spiritual path, the mountain is a mountain. You think it's solid and real and heavy, and you can define it. And then you go through your spiritual path and you realize the mountain's not a mountain. You see through it. It's like a trip, bro. And then at the end, yo, dude. And then at the end, when you actually attain enlightenment, you realize the mountain is a mountain again.
Yeah.
But it's not solid. So it's kind of both. You don't end the duality. The duality just becomes one again, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that makes total sense to me. You just reminded me of a time when I was doing a silent meditation retreat in the jungle here in Bali with a wonderful teacher called Pak Merta Ada, and he's a Balinese healer who's a Buddhist. So he's created this wonderful smorgasbord of Balinese Hinduism, some more ancient sort of regional Balinese healing teachings and Buddhism, and sort of thrown it all into this wonderful practice called the Tapabrata, which is a 7-day silent retreat where you're just meditating all day, every day, not talking to anybody, not writing anything down or using computers or using phones or no technology. And the core of the meditation he teaches you is the mantra, may all beings be happy, which is Loka Samasta
Sukhino Bhavantu.
Yeah, I always forget that bit. May all beings be happy, may all beings be happy. So he's encouraging you through this meditation to send the love out there, out to the universe. And then on the very last day, I was very used to this practice by now, but on the very last day, he suddenly invited us all to turn that love inward. and for the first time say, may I be happy. And, the moment I did that, my heart opened up. I burst into tears and I sobbed silently as I could for 45 minutes. Through the whole meditation, I just sat there sobbing as my heart opened, and I realized I'd not loved myself. And actually, I'd been putting myself through samsara, or across the river of suffering, which has many burnt bridges, and it's full of spilt milk. And I'd been beating myself, I suppose, for many, many years. So to suddenly have that realization and turn that love on myself was a wonderful thing indeed.
Love that.
It was Lao Tzu, wasn't it, who said I'm bodging quotes as well. It's about the way to happiness. There is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way, which kind of resonated when you were talking about the mountain.
Yeah, well, it's both. It's a journey. Trungpa Rinpoche has a book that's titled Journey Without a Goal. So you are making a journey. There is a way, but the cosmic joke of it, very Buddhist humor, is that when you finally get there, you're just right back here. You're right here. You're present with your own basic goodness, your own Buddha nature. There was nowhere to go. No. And in fact, when we're leaving all the time, that's actually part of the issue, part of the problem.
So have you got any questions for us, Waylon? Because I'm always conscious that we hammer people with questions and then I talk far too much in our podcasts. But is there anything that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, well, I love the whole, I feel like, in our culture and particularly in spirituality, which is somewhat surprising, we love to avoid the notion of death. And I love, I have one chapter about death in my book. Maybe there should be more. I definitely have some chapters about letting go. But I guess, I'd be curious for those who are listening as well as myself, just hopefully selfishly in a smart way. What has been most helpful in your various conversations and interviews in terms of appreciating life, living life for the benefit of others and living life fully, and most precious sort of moments you've had or realizations you've had around death and living life fully?
That's a great couple of questions. Well, one of the common themes that's come up in all of our interviews so far, and we've had a range of people from psychedelic trauma-informed counselors to tragedy, grief and loss counselors, a suicide mentor specifically. We've had a Bitcoin consultant with a completely different mindset, not talking about money being energy. The conversation isn't even about Bitcoin when you really sort of dive into that. And we've had an international best-selling author called Carl Honoré, who wrote a load of books about slowing down, and more and more. But the point is, the common theme that seems to be coming into play is twofold. First thing, that all of these perspectives that all of these thought leaders are now sharing and so prevalently and are being more widely accepted prevalently, I think. Actually, they're not new ideas. They're a new take on an old idea. They're a new take on ancient wisdom. For example, Buddhism. For example, Hinduism, Taoism, Confucianism, and that's a really key outtake for me, because what it made me start to think was, okay, and obviously prior to the podcast, this had already occurred to me. We're all talking about these ways to do things, to slow down, to meditate, an alternative approach to the way of living, and ultimately the way of dying, which I'll come on to. But actually, this wisdom dates back thousands of years. So this is why I'm happy to proactively encourage people to actually, I don't care if you've never thought about Buddhism or Taoism or Confucianism, I do invite you wholeheartedly to maybe just go and have a look at it, because actually there's some amazing, clear and simple wisdom in all of this. So that's one of the common themes that's come out of the show. We're talking to people who are essentially all aligned with the same concept, and that is, if we can learn to live better, if we can learn to live well, ultimately we are learning how to die well. If that makes sense. Have you read the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, or the Tibetan Book of the Dead?
Yeah, I've read a different translation than the first title you mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah, so you get the idea, essentially, that and of course this all comes back to Buddhism, that the whole idea is live in the present moment every day. Treat every day as though it might be your last, but not like you're 20, so you're just going to go out and get smashed and party.
Yeah.
That's not the plan. The plan is to just, I suppose, ask yourself, if I died, and this is the question we pose in our trailer, if you had 5 minutes left to live, what would be on your list your top list of regrets? And that's something I'm really keen that we invite our listeners to do, and do it now, or do it after this podcast. Just write down the top 10 regrets that you have right now, and it doesn't matter what age you are, where you are financially, where you are socially, how many Instagram followers you've got, how your career's doing. You now have a chance in the present moment with that list to do something about it. So that's really what we're trying to do with the show, and it's to say, look, it doesn't matter whether or not you believe in life after death. We are going to get into that. Oh yeah, we're going to get into that. This show has got legs to run all around for years and years. So we're going to dive into that with theologians and religious leaders as well, no doubt. But also, I want to talk to mediums. I want to talk to people who have had near-death experiences. I've had a near-death experience. So we're going to dive into it. But it doesn't matter if you believe that you're going to die, and as you say, the switch is going off. Okay, let's say that's the case. Well, if that is the case, wouldn't you want this time here then to be the best time it could be? And you said something earlier on that really resonated with me. The idea that whatever you do, whatever your actions are, actually they bring joy. And I don't mean, again, the sort of joy that we get from partying and staying up all night and general hedonism. I did that for 20 years, by the way, so I'm not judging anybody. Although I would happily invite people to cut that by half. If you want any advice from me, party for 10 years, not 20 years.
Right.
So yeah, sorry, a very long answer to your question. But this has come about for me in realizing the impermanence of all things, and in realizing that the one universal constant is change. And of course, as the Buddha said, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Yet we suffer so much because we're attached to everything. And if we could just learn to not be attached to things, and certainly to reframe what it is in our lives that we're focusing on, and are they healthy, and are they helpful toward that end game, because we've only got 5 minutes left to live. And I think that's really where we're going with it.
Yeah, but also, as we've mentioned, it's not just the theoretical. We want to give people the tools to work through these things. And I feel like with such a variety of guests to share, often they're sharing the same threads, these beautiful golden threads that are coming down, but the different ways they're sharing it are going to resonate with different people. So we can all then find what resonates with us in order to start working through these things. That's
spot on, because as you know, Waylon, there are so many different healing modalities and options for us. We could do Qigong, we could do Tai Chi, I could do sound healing, I can do yoga, I can do breath work, I can do plant medicine, I can meditate. Although I would add, meditation should be a staple diet for everybody on the planet, but that's just my own opinion. So we have all of these wonderful modalities and many more that I couldn't list just then. And of course, not all of them resonate with everyone. So I think it's another idea for what we're trying to do here is to bring those people onto the show and get their opinion. So, you know, you're the first expert on Buddhism we've had. Expert on Buddhism because you're a Buddhist, right? So it's been wonderful to hear your perspective and for you to talk about Buddhism, not as a tourist like me, but because it's been your way of life. So for that, I thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure. It's been fun. I look forward to hearing your adventures with all your other guests.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be wild. We've got some epic people lined up, and we're always on the lookout for more as well. And I think the show is going down very well, very quickly with a lot of people. We're getting some wonderful feedback. So I think the fundamental thing is for us to always remember it's about, yes, we've got stories, but we always want to do what Waylon says, and that is, okay, you give me the pros, you give me the tail, but what's the how do I do it? So we've got to always remind people that there are practical utilities. So I'm going to ask you one more question before we go. If you had one practical utility to hand over to our audience members today, what would it be?
That's a great question. I think in the morning when I'm meditating, when I'm done meditating, in the evening when I'm meditating before bed, and after I'm done meditating, you begin and end with a bow, and that bow isn't some fancy little spiritual flourish to be cool. That bow is about, you're basically saying, may I be of benefit. So my request for your show, wherever you're going to be all over the place interviewing all these different people, modalities, thought leaders from all these different traditions and going in different directions, different galaxies. And my request to everyone listening would be, begin and end everything you do with, may I be of benefit. May all beings be happy. May I be happy. Because if it's not of benefit, very quickly in the spiritual path, we can lose. You were talking about partying for 20 years, maybe cut it down to 10. Very quickly on the spiritual path, you can get lost in 20 years, getting off on all these teachings and fun little adventures. And Trungpa Rinpoche, my parents' Buddhist teacher, was very critical. He said, don't just make the spiritual path another kind of fun little like spiritual salad bar. Like, don't just collect a little blessing from here and a teaching from here and all the different things. Really do it. Like, if you get a blessing or you get a teaching, do it. Follow that path. And if it's not for you, you can be discerning. That's fine. But really try to be of benefit, because, gosh, life is precious. And while we're here, you never know how long you're going to be here. While you're here, really try to be of benefit, because this world is on fire on some level, both with
big time
rancor, with partisanship, with people hating on one another, but also just physically, we are drowning, we are destroying this planet, exploiting it. And we don't have to. We can really heal. A lot of people say, oh, the earth will be fine without us, when we all go extinct. I find that like a real cop-out. That's very nihilistic. Mm-hmm. We can't go extinct without taking billions of beings and trees and children and animals with us. We really have to heal ourselves, heal one another, be kind. How do we be kind? So yes, the how, but also make sure anything anyone is talking about, how is it a benefit to all sentient beings? Because living in Boulder is probably similar to Bali in the sense you can be around people who are tripping on their philosophical or spiritual ideas. And oh my God, there's nothing more boring than tripping out on your own fantasies about spirituality. It's like, how is it a benefit? There are people out there who are dying to be helped and dying to make friends with themselves. If a wise woman or man person could have come to you, in year 10 of your hedonism and you're being lost in partying, and helped you save 10 years, you'd be so grateful for that, I would imagine. So how can we be of benefit?
Yeah, that's a wonderful way to end this discussion. Thank you, Waylon. I have to say, I've been looking forward to speaking to you for a long time, because obviously I've been involved with your online publication for a couple of years now, and I think what you're doing is a wonderful thing, and long may it reign. And we certainly wish you the very best of luck with this new book. And we look forward to reading it, of course, once you've finished editing it. So we're promoting it a little bit early, but I'm assuming it is available to pre-order. And you can find a link to Waylon's profile on the website. So it's howtodiehappypodcast.com/on-the-show. You'll find Waylon Lewis. We've linked to Elephant Journal. Waylon is all over that website because it's his baby. Well, it's probably not a baby anymore. It's actually it's gone to college, hasn't it, by now?
Yeah, it's 19 years old now. So definitely in college.
Well, here's to some formative college years for Elephant Journal. And thank you very much, Waylon. Really appreciate your time. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Waylon.
Thank you both. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure and an honor.